Alright guys, Grumpy is back, and today we're going to be discussing Bitwarden Password Manager. Now I've been able to use Bitwarden personally for the last, 5 or 6 months, and it seems to do a pretty good job for what I need for my personal stuff. But now I'm going to go ahead and venture into getting the enterprise license for my business. So in this particular case, I'm going to run Bitwarden in a self-hosted configuration. And this is my preferred method because I just don't want it exposed onto the internet with sensitive data. So I usually take the approach of the trust no one when it comes to this type of sensitive data. So because this is going to be hosting client information, I chose to run this on a DigitalOcean droplet through a VPN using WireGuard. In this particular case, I'm going to have to buy the Bitwarden Enterprise license, which allows me to self-host and allows me to create organizations and collections, along with all the additional features like the two-factor authentication options and stuff like that. So just for reference, my topology is going to look like this. It's going to be real simple. It's going to be DigitalOcean server with 2 gigs running Ubuntu, Docker, and WireGuard. And just trust me on this. You can't run this you won't be able to run the self-hosted instance with 1 gig of memory. You're going to get some issues with Docker spinning up the instance. So just go with the 2 gig. Trust me, you'll save yourself a lot of headache and frustration. Also, you don't have to go with DigitalOcean. That's just what I use. You can use whatever you want. And the client will be connected through WireGuard to this DigitalOcean server. So I'm not going to get into the installation and setup of Bitwarden. There's a lot of videos and documentation on how to do this. So I'm going to be more focused on getting this up and running for me and some of the other issues that you may have with Bitwarden and some of the feature sets. In my case, I decided to purchase an actual certificate for a host name for DigitalOcean server. So even though I'm going through VPN WireGuard, it's not really necessary for me to have an SSL cert, but I did decide to just put one on there anyways, a valid one, because I may actually look at exposing this later on, possibly in the future. I just wanted to have that cert ready to go and applied and everything. So once you have Bitwarden set up and ready to go, in your Bitwarden installation directory, if you do a list there, you'll see some of these files. Now, there's a couple files here that are going to be key to get your Bitwarden set up properly. Now, the first one's in the environment directory. And in particular, it's going to be the global override file. Now in this file, you can see at the top here, you have global settings, which is the base service URL and the admin URL, notifications URL, and the settings here for the attachments, if you're going to attach any of those into the records. And also you're going to have down here, an SMTP configuration. So if you want to send yourself emails when someone logs in, stuff like that, just get a little more detailed information, maybe when someone logs in with an incorrect incorrect login, things like that. So this is going to be very important. Now through here, you can actually change the host name of the Bitwarden instance. So let's say you want to change it later, or maybe you messed up and you bought a cert and you want to change it. You can do all that from here. Again, change your SMTP settings and where your license directory is, stuff like that. But typically, you're not going to want to change anything here unless you're like a super advanced user. Just change the SMTP info and make sure the base URL stuff is in here as well. Now, also in this file is your license identity key. So this is your installation ID and so right here, your installation ID is down here, and also your installation key is down here for when you had to register with Bitwarden. If you're going to self-host, it's going to send you, it's going to spit out a file. When you register with Bitwarden for the self-hosted instance, when you put in that email address, it's going to tell you to copy that information in this file. So that's one important file. There is an SSL directory, and from in there will be the name of your instance. And in here is where you're going to need to drop in your CA cert, your actual certificate, and the private key if you are going to host this with a public SSL cert. Now, one thing to know is that Bitwarden, you need an SSL cert to run this really. You can't really connect to this unencrypted, so it's got to be SSL. There are ways of getting around it without buying a certificate. You can obviously put in your own CA cert, your own certificate. Obviously, you might have to import that into any devices to trust that cert when you're accessing Bitwarden. So now when you log into Bitwarden for the first time, you're going to have to create an account, and you can do that by clicking on the create an account here. It's going to send you an email address and then send you a link back to create a master password and things like that. But once you actually go ahead and create the master password, in my case, I also have TOTP turned on. All right, so let's get into some of the settings and how Bitwarden works with organizations. Now you can see here when you first get logged in here, you're in your vault, which is your own personal vault. So there's two distinctions to make here. There's a personal vault, and then there's an organization vault if you decide to opt in to self-host or you're doing this for a business. Your organization will be here on the right-hand side. Now, as you can see here, there's something called collections, and below here are actually shared passwords for basically shared assets for the company that you bought the license for. So they're identified by these little square little cubes. So if you go into the organization on the right hand side, this is the actual organization vault. From here, you can click on, you can see that there's tabs on the top, and we can manage our vault from here too. These are people that I have invited to join the organizational vault. So what happens is you actually invite a user, it sends them an email. Once they get the email, they can register with Bitwarden, and you can actually control what collections they have access to. So you can see under here, these are the people that are invited. Under here are my collections. Right, and from here I can click on the little gear and I can see what users have access to this particular collection. So it's actually really good for locking down specific permissions. You can also create groups, which I don't have, and you can also create some basic policies. There's nothing too crazy in here, but you can force users to use two-factor, minimum requirements for master password length, minimum requirements for password generator. You can restrict users not to be able to join any other organizations, single sign-on, authentication, and this is one that you might want to be able to turn on, turn off, is require users to save vault items to an organization by removing the personal ownership option. So the two really important ones for me here are the two-step login and the personal ownership option. So if you invite someone to the Bitwarden vault for the organization, you can force them whenever they create an asset to directly save that into the organizational vault, not their personal vault. Then there's disable send. So send is a new feature in Bitwarden where you can securely communicate text. You can securely send sensitive information to a user with a whole bunch of options. We'll go into that a little bit later. And then you have event log here. So if you go into tools here, you'll see that you have an import option and an export. This is how I actually imported all my data, was using this import function. Now, it did take me a while to scrub and sanitize that CSV file because I was using a password database product that isn't really popular. It is open source, but yeah, it was a little unfortunate because I had to do quite a bit of work on the CSV. And from here, you can get reports on weak passwords or reuse passwords reports, stuff like this. So I don't know how important that is for most users. And in setting, this is where it's going to give you the name of your organization. And from here, you can grab an API key. You can also check your subscription level, which tells you what the expiration date of the license is. The Bitwarden Enterprise license is a paid paid fee, and then you can go ahead here and manage the two-step login. Now, if you click on this business portal login, this is something that I personally I have not configured. But you can click on here and you can click on to enable different single sign-on methods. Okay, so what options do we have when we're trying to add a new item to the vault? So what type of item is this? Login, card, identity, secured note. So we're going to give this particular item test. And now if I was putting it into my personal vault, I may already have folders pre-configured to do this. But in this particular case, because this is more focused on a business use, I'm going to leave the folder blank, and we're going to type in the username, which is also going to be test, and the password is also going to be very secure password of test. I don't have an OTP, TOTP private key to put in here, so I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to leave the URL blank and no notes. What I really want to point out though here is the fact that who owns this item. Now this is very important because, as I mentioned previously in the video, if I have the ability to do this set by the policy, I can either put this in my personal vault which is my login to the Bitwarden, database, or I can choose the organization, which will give me the option to let me know which collection to save this item in. So I just wanted to show some of you guys that, as you may not have seen it before. Okay, so let's look at the browser extension. So I have it installed here, and if I click on my vault, I'll just see all my items and my collections in the organization. But let's focus on settings here, because there's some different options here now that we have the web browser extension here. Now I'm using this for Firefox, but you can use it for Chrome. We have the default sort of settings you'll see in the web version as well: folder, sync, exclude domains. But in particular now we can tell it when the vault timeout happens. On the browser restart is what I have it set at, but you can also indicate a time frame. And also the vault timeout action, what happens, lock or log out. And then you can also set up an unlock with PIN for quick access to be able to get into the extension. You can also lock the vault now, and you can also enable two-step login. Now this premium membership, since we have the enterprise version, we have all the features, and we can self-host. We can change the master password of the vault, and a fingerprint phrase is something that Bitwarden gives you in case you may have lost your vault password to regain access into some settings. Can log out from here. Then we have the import export stuff, but here is where I wanted to get into the options. So what other options? This is where you can enable autofill on page load. This really works well, I guess, if you're using it for yourself and yourself only. But because I'm using it for an organization, I might have multiple logins for, let's say, Office 365, tens or 20 or even hundreds of Office 365 logins based on clients that I work with. So for me, I actually have that setting off for now. Again, we can match the URL for base domain or other options, regular expressions, which is cool. You can set the clipboard to clear itself out. Disable TOTP copy if you want to get really restrictive like that. Don't show cards on tab page. It's pretty self-explanatory. Don't show identities on tab page. Disable add login notifications. So when you go to a website and you sign in and it doesn't have an entry for that page, there's a little banner strip that goes across the browser that asks you if you want to add it to Bitwarden. You can disable that as well. Disable change password notification as well. Disable context menu options. Disable website icons. Again, if you want to get really secure, you can do that, as it will put some sort of favicons or icons associated to logins that it knows about. And you can change the theme. I guess recommend installing the extension. It's a lot quicker to get access to things. Now let's look at Bitwarden Send. So Send is a secure way where you can send like text, like a text note to somebody, or even a file. So if you click on Add Send, we'll just give this one, we'll call this one LOL, and it's going to be text. And we'll enter, this is your secret password. And I can hide the send text by default. So let's do that. And copy this send's link to clipboard upon save. Now we also have more options. We can set an expiry for the link. We can also tell it how many times we want this to be accessed. We can also assign a password on top of this. So if you really want to get crazy, we'll assign a password of LOL, and you can add a note and disable this send so that no one can access it. So we don't want to do that. We want to hit save, and it's going to spit out an entry here where we can copy this to the clipboard. So let's go take a look at what that looks like. So now if I enter the link into my web browser, you'll see that Bitwarden Send is protected by a password, and we're going to have to enter that. So good thing I know the password. And then it tells that Bitwarden user, the username, shared the following with you. It's hidden by default. You can toggle this visibility using the button below. And this is pretty cool because maybe there's some people around you and you don't want to sort of expose what's there until you know it's safe. So now I can toggle the visibility. Here's my secret text. I can do whatever I want with it at this point. And now I'm going to go back to the link again. You will see that I can access it. And same thing applies. Now I put a restriction on how many times I could access this. A third time, it's going to tell me that the send you're trying to access does not exist or is no longer available. I really like this feature, and this is one of the reasons why I may think of exposing my Bitwarden instance on the internet in the future, because I do send a lot of passwords through the internet, and this would just make me feel better. Right now, it's difficult to send clients passwords because a lot of them don't use secure messaging apps. Like I won't send something like a password over my WhatsApp or Facebook or anything like that. I typically try to have people install Signal if I can to communicate secure stuff that way. All right, so some backup steps that I do in particular, because the server is hosted on DigitalOcean, I set up a backup routine so that it backs up weekly. And also for my own sake, I have this BW data directory, which contains all of Bitwarden's data that I would need to restore the database and config files. I'm taking a copy of this Bitwarden data directory offsite to an S3 bucket as well. So that's just the way that I cover my butt in case something were to happen. And because I'm hosting this Bitwarden server through a VPN connection, I go into DigitalOcean and I obviously create a firewall so that I only want ports accepted. And for me, that's 22 for SSH and my WireGuard port. All right, guys, I think that pretty much wraps up this video. I mean, I could probably go on for another half an hour about Bitwarden and show you some more features. But what I would suggest is if you're looking for a password manager to manage your personal and corporate assets, I think Bitwarden is a good choice. I like the fact that it splits the personal vault and the organizational vault separate, and I can assign permissions to users. I can assign permissions to collections. I can self-host it. Also, the Bitwarden Send is a really nice feature. And of course, the most important feature, it being open source. All right, guys, that's it for me. I'll see you in the next one.